First agenda item we have is the review and approval of meeting minutes. We got two sets of them. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 8th as written.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You guys have it?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 15th as written.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll get right into design update, and I'll turn it over to Scott and Vivian. I don't know who's going first today.
I will start off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, just briefly, we've provided a couple of additional exterior renderings, again, targeting at providing a sense of the solar canopies around the Cuniff and the Hosmer. This is actually an image that you saw last time as sort of a reminder. And then we talked about, and this was an image that you saw last time as well, but we talked about doing some images from vantage points where the solar canopies would perhaps block the building even more. This is also a rendering from last time. And then this at the Cuniff is a rendering from the parking lot, which probably would be your most obscured view of the new building, but just giving you a sense of what it would look like in that parking lot, in the parking area under that canopy. We also wanted to update, I think that represents the image that we talked about before as being kind of the most obscure and giving you an idea of what it would look like underneath the canopy. At the Hosmer, it would be similar in that the canopy would shut your vantage point down to approximately the building height that you see through that canopy. And then also we wanted to just briefly provide an update on the emergency access road at the Cuniff site. We mentioned previously that we were working with the police department, the fire department, in this case specifically the fire department, for as much access as possible on the back side of the Cuniff. This is the back, as a reminder, this is the back corner of the site. This is the back corner of the newly proposed gymnasium. And these are the residential house lots that sit along that back property line. And then this would be the newly proposed finished emergency access lane tied into Copeland Street. It comes a short distance off the site, but then it comes onto the corner of the site. And then we're able to maintain that 20 feet until you get about here. This is, by the way, is the outdoor garden area. But until you get about here, and then it does need to go down to 16 feet as a result of just trying to work with the topography and not cut so far into the side of the hill that we would kill the trees along this edge, or that we would need a substantial retaining wall or anything like that. So we're trying to work with the natural topography. We can take that 16 feet to here where it becomes 15 feet, then it narrows to 12 feet here, then it goes to 8 feet here, and it would be 8 feet from that point to the playground area. And we've also changed this so that the entire area, the entire surface area would be pervious pavement, so would be pavement which would allow drainage versus before we had a mixture of pervious pavement and pavers, and the fire department had asked if it could be simplified to just be pervious pavement. Certainly doesn't change its ability to drain. It probably, in the end, might make a better surface for actually the students to be able to come out onto in inclement weather. So we did change that to all pervious pavement, and the grading didn't change that much. We just maximized the width of the road as far as we could along the back of the building, and then we've got the respective section cuts and topography that you can see there associated with that. So minor change, but we just wanted to update. And we're still in conversations with the fire department with regard to this particular design, and just trying to get their input and continuing conversations about what is and is not possible on the site. Any questions specific to that? Okay. At the last building committee meeting, the chairman, the vice chairman, also the chairman of the subcommittee for sustainability, Mr. Ports, talked about some conversations we had, or a meeting we had prior to the last building committee meeting to focus on sustainability and some recommendations that the sustainability subcommittee would be making to the full building committee. And so tonight, we just wanted to review those recommendations, share some of the information we shared with the subcommittee, and then review the extent of those recommendations. First, just as an update, and we provided this to the subcommittee, but this is the current layout for photovoltaic, for solar panels, photovoltaic panels on the Hosmer site. It's not changed from the layouts that you've seen in the past in that it still represents a solar canopy on this edge of the site, solar canopies over the parking areas in front of the new building, solar canopies at the northwest corner of the site over those parking areas, and then the roof solar canopies. And we still have a projected total output, annual output for this complete array. That means the ground-mounted solar and the roof-mounted solar of about 1 million kWh per year, which, as a reminder, is also approximately the amount of energy that the building is projected to use per year. So that's consistent with what we've discussed in the past. And then this is the most recent CUNF layout that we've reviewed with the building committee, and then we reviewed in more detail with the sustainability subcommittee. But it represents the canopy over the parking area. It represents a ground-mounted array on the hill just beyond the end of the parking area, between the end of the parking area and the property line. And then it represents a canopy that projects up, much like a parking canopy would, over the back roadway, the back emergency access roadway coming in. And then the arrays that we've talked about as being located on the roof in the past. And the production on that particular collection of photovoltaics is just under 600,000 kWh per year. 586 is the most recent projection. And as a reminder, the CUNF is projected to have an annual usage of just over 600,000 kWh per year.
A question? On the canopies where the emergency access is, if a ladder truck has to get under there and you potentially use a ladder, how is that going to work?
The canopy in that location may end up being slightly different than, it'll still be a parking style canopy, but we may have to do a greater angle on that. The engineers are looking at that now to determine the extension angle on the ladder and exactly what we would have to do there to meet the clearances, but you're correct about that.
Thank you. John?
Just one follow-up to that and then another question. But isn't that C3 area at a point where I don't know if you could get a ladder truck to that? I mean, because of the narrowing of the path?
In the first, I would say in the first 25% of it, in this zone down here, we do have a potential conflict that we're studying to make sure, because the ladder truck can get to a zone, this is where it transitions from kind of 16 to 12 feet,
yeah.
And a ladder truck might still make that route until it gets to 8 feet, so we're just making certain we've got the clearances in that first part of the canopy, if you will.
And would that C3 be sloped like the C1 is?
It's possible that we would have to put more slope on a section of that C3 canopy versus the C1 canopy in order to accommodate that, that apparatus and the ladder extension in a zone at the first part of that canopy.
Okay. And then if I could follow up quick, C2, can you say more about that? It looks smaller than C1 in terms of width?
C2.
And you're talking about
sure.
like literally on the ground or how high up?
Yeah.
Or what would the,
C2 would look similar to the kind of canopy you might see off to the side of the interstate where some
Yeah.
photovoltaic, ground-mounted photovoltaics have been completed. In other words, it's not attempting to be a canopy that goes over a parking area. It is up off the ground, but it's just up off the ground enough to get the panels up off the ground. But that's a hillside. There's a retaining wall at the end of that parking lot edge. And then that will be a hillside from there to the property line. And so it's that kind of array that you would typically see mounted closer to the ground. In an area that we don't anticipate that the students would be able to have access to because it slopes so sharply going up from the retaining wall to the edge of the property.
and it goes right up to the property line of the people on the street
That is correct.
up there. And I assume it would be fenced off or something like that?
There's a fence on this boundary of their property right now.
Would you fence off the front of it so people wouldn't have access to
The
it?
retaining wall has to have a fence along it anyway, because of the distance between the retaining wall and the ground. So yes, it would be a retaining wall on that side, and then a fence.
Thanks.
Steve?
Just two quick questions. One, it seems like the area between B1 and B5 on the roof is wider than, I guess, some of the areas between arrays on the Hosmer roof. Is there a reason that has to be that wide?
It's probably just scale of the drawings, because the drawings that are a slightly different scale. But that area is for the clearance associated with the fresh air recovery units, or the makeup air units that are supplying fresh air inside the building and making sure we've got maintenance clearances around that equipment.
And I guess the other question I had is on the Hosmer, it looks like C2 extends out over the public road, and that could be an issue. I think we might want to, and it's probably, something to be adjusted in the actual design or construction, but just wanted to note that.
It's a good point. This is, the drawing that we're showing here is actually the photovoltaic drawing. And what they tend to do in their drawing is just generically place them, but our site drawing shows very specifically where they land.
Thank you.
Lindsay?
I actually just had a question on the kind of drawings about the outdoor learning gardens. And so on the slide we have, on this one at kind of, there's a spot, and I just don't know if the overlay of the solar panels plan is just not on an updated, because like, for instance, in this picture, it doesn't have like the emergency access road on it, right? So right now, there's an outdoor garden shown sort of from this angle below the circular hard court, and it says outdoor garden. But that would be, I think, completely shaded from the south side by that canopy. But then if you go back to the drawing of the emergency access road, I believe that the bottom corner of that is labeled as the learning garden over there. So I'm just wondering where we're planning on putting it. I don't think it's both.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, I don't know.
There is the main garden area for the Cuniff
Yeah.
is right here on this corner.
Yep,
The,
okay.
the site plan associated with the photovoltaics, unfortunately, because it's purely we took some of the information off of that drawing
Yeah.
because it's purely an engineering drawing.
Right.
And so they didn't really care a lot about whether they had the most up-to-date site plan
Oh,
or
yes,
not.
I just kind of
Sure.
wanted to confirm
Sure,
where we were
yeah.
at with where the garden was. All right.
So you're right, that's a dated site plan that's underneath their photovoltaic design.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask one last question? Thank you, Scott. So this scheme's got 586,000 kilowatt hours annually, and the previous target was 590. So are we considering that the final design, or are you going to try to squeeze in like one more panel?
We are continually looking at the possibility of adding additional panels, but this includes slightly more than we've ever included, I think, on the Cuniff site, and so we're getting very close to that target. And one of the things we discussed with the Sustainability Subcommittee is the building's anticipated and estimated energy use can be somewhat misleading in that if you look at the breakdown, and we actually provided all the building committee members with the same handout that we provided to the Sustainability Subcommittee. If you look at the breakdown of the proposed energy use on the Cuniff or the Hosmer, interestingly enough, only 21% of the energy is for heating and cooling. And the largest anticipated culprit for energy use is plug loading, which means plugging in your computer, plugging in your iPhone to charge it, leaving a lamp plugged in overnight. And so with a net zero building, one of the most important factors upon occupancy is educating the occupants to understand that even putting their phone charger in an outlet, even without the phone connected to it, draws current from that outlet. So we've got to try to reduce that 42% number, and even if you reduce it a little bit, you're clearly going to meet your target. So a lot of meeting net zero is going to be about user behavior in that first year. And so when you say, or when we say that the building's anticipated to use about 590,000 and we're at 586, we've met the goal. Now the next step will be educating the occupants on using the building efficiently.
Okay.
Continue.
In our discussion with the Sustainability Subcommittee, we indicated that at this point in time, the professional team, meaning your OPM and your designer team, feel that it would be a good idea to include, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but include in the base bid construction documents those structural support canopies for the photovoltaic panels on the site. So all of those canopies that are projecting over the parking areas and the canopies that are projecting over the emergency access roadway, or the canopy that's projecting over the emergency access roadway at the Cuniff, we think that it would be a good idea to include those canopies in the base bid construction documents. And you may recall that those canopies were estimated for both Cuniff and Hosmer collectively to be worth about $1.5 million. And there are several advantages, but certainly the coordination of the canopy installation and remaining site work would be much less disruptive if it's part of the contractor's work versus having to come back after the fact and try to integrate a different contractor or try to excavate on the site in an area that work may already be complete in. The thing that became really obvious to us as we continued to design the site lighting and the safety and security for the building, particularly site security, was that the cameras that are being designed for the site in coordination with the school department, police, and fire are very site-specific. And as you might imagine, those canopies become a pretty significant obstacle on the site. And so including those in the base bid as part of the design and construction from the very beginning allows us to go ahead and commit to very specific strategies for police, fire, and the school administration on something like the building cameras. And it would be very challenging to try to do things like that after the fact. And then I know we've talked a number of times, although it's not the highest priority, certainly coordinating the aesthetics of the canopies with the building and not allowing that to be controlled by some other entity has some value. So for that reason, we recommended to the subcommittee that they recommend to this building committee that the canopy, the structural canopies be included as part of the base bid of the construction for both the Cuniff and the Hosmer. We went on to discuss the fact that the photovoltaics themselves, meaning the actual panels, and as a reminder, the infrastructure for all the photovoltaics in terms of conduits inside the building, raceways, everything needed to pull all the wiring, we've always said we would build into the base bid of the construction documents. The photovoltaic panels themselves and the equipment associated with those, we are suggesting and recommending, again as a team, that the committee consider including those as a bid alternate on both the Cuniff and the Hosmer. And I should explain a little bit about what that means. Massachusetts general law will allow you in a construction bid to include alternates that the contractor and subcontractors have to provide a price for. You have to, if you have alternates on a project, they either have to be additive or deductive. In this case, we're talking about one additive alternate. And so we would collectively propose that the building committee consider placing all of the photovoltaic panels themselves in a package as a bid alternate and get a separate price for that as part of the construction bid. That allows a number of things. It allows you to continue to evaluate whether the committee and the town wants to own these panels and include them in the project or provide them as part of a power purchasing agreement. So it gives you a longer timeline to think about that decision and continue the analysis that is underway on PPA versus ownership. It allows the decision on acceptance of alternates to not have to occur until after we bid the project, and you would essentially have about 60 days after the project is bid. So you think about pushing that into sort of early June, July, actually late June or early July before you'd have to make that decision. There's absolutely no obligation to accept the alternate. It provides the committee with the exact cost of the alternate, and so you would know under a general contract bid exactly what that cost is. So far, we've just had an estimate on that cost. And then it would allow the committee to evaluate that cost in the context of knowing what the cost of the total construction on both of those projects would be. So we think for those reasons, it would make some sense to include that as a bid alternate. And with that, I'll defer to Mr. Ports with regard to the Sustainability Subcommittee's discussions on that. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add.
No, I think we brought it up at the last meeting. We actually, the Sustainability Subcommittee supported this. All three members supported it, and we brought that forward at the last meeting as a vote. So recommending that we do this. This is an easier vote than some that we might have later, do you think?
I should have pointed out, we're not suggesting that the building committee commit the discretionary funds on the project to the bid alternate. At this time, we want to just make it clear that we're not suggesting any commitment. This would simply provide you with the pricing such that, for example, if the bids came in more competitively than expected and came in under budget, you would get to evaluate whether the project, the project budget allowed for you to select it at that point in time. But we're not in any way suggesting that any funds be specifically deferred to this item or applied to this item. We're just suggesting you bid it for the purpose of knowing exactly what it costs and then having that option to evaluate the decision.
Would you make a motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a
please?
motion that along the lines of the presentation here, that the base bid include the canopies and the associated elements with that, and that a bid alternate be designed for the PV panels and the components with that.
Is there a
Second.
Discussion. Kelly? Kelly first, and I looked that way,
I
sorry.
just want to get some clarification just with the wording of that. So base bid is going to include the roof PVs, so everything that's on the roof, and then the alternate is site PVs?
Base bid would only include the canopies, the structural support canopies that are on the site, and it would include all the infrastructure, so all the conduits inside the building, underground, et cetera. It would include no actual photovoltaic panels. The alternate would be all the photovoltaic panels on both the roof and the site.
Why don't we split it up so that we're carrying the roof in the base bid and the site and all the associated infrastructure as an alternate? It doesn't make sense the way that we're splitting it up because we're committing regardless because our base bid includes all of the supports.
Just repeat that.
Unless I'm misunderstanding.
The tricky part about, if I understand the question correctly, the tricky part about splitting the roof, and because we had this discussion with sustainability, splitting the roof from the site is, it would, if you're only going to do the roof, for example, it changes all of your switchgear, transformers, it changes the complete design of the system.
Yep.
Versus designing it for everything. So you couldn't, if you were going to take the design and design it to include both the site and the building roof and design the systems with all the necessary switchgear, transformers, et cetera, you'd already be committed to the full system. It's very difficult to break
But
the
we're
two
already
systems
committing to
up.
the full system regardless, because now we're saying we're going to buy all the infrastructure, but we're not going to buy the PV panels.
Well, you could buy the PV through a PPA, for example.
So I guess that's my question. So we're essentially making our decision going with the PP&A because,
No.
No, we're just putting all the PV panels themselves in one package, whether they're on the canopies or on the roof of the building, they're
Okay.
in one package. So I think what we're saying is likely that we would either own the whole thing or do the whole thing as a PPA. That's my understanding. We're
Okay.
treating them together.
And I guess what I'm saying is when it comes to the roof scope and the site scope, we're not looking at a potential for just the roof or just the site.
Right.
We're looking at an all or nothing scenario, which I have my own thoughts about, but we don't have to go into that. Aesthetically, I think the site PVs are incredibly unsightly. I mean, I know the Sustainability Committee will not agree with me on that, but I just think that, cost-wise, in our budget, we did not budget for the site PVs. We have a bucket of, money that could essentially 100% go towards that, and then we would have no extra funds there, which I think would be a poor decision. Or we could do a PP&A, which, could work for us. But I guess, I'm just not really following the logic, I guess.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I viewed the bid alternate as a way to compare the pricing of us purchasing it versus a PPA. And you're right, we're going the direction of committing to having, PV throughout. Aesthetically, it may not be the greatest, but I think at least going with the design and the base of adding the supports and the structures for it, at least allows us to design it with our architect in a way that works as best as possible with the building.
And Scott, can you just, or I guess it would be
Hold on.
Vivian.
I've got to recognize
Oh,
Laurie first.
I'm sorry, I just wanted some
Okay.
clarification.
Please.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm good.
Okay, Kelly.
I'm sorry, I just wanted a reminder for the pricing that we reviewed last time, did that include the supports or what was included?
The pricing that we reviewed established 1.5 million as the estimate for just the canopies, or the site support canopies, and then identified 4.5 million as the cost for PV for building, roof, and site for both the Cuniff and the Hosmer.
Okay.
And I would point out, there was a wide swing between the two estimates on the PV panels themselves. The range was actually from 2.8 million to over 5 million, and we chose the 4.5 as a very conservative kind of upper range of that.
Yes.
And we ran a payback analysis on this, so we understand how many years it's going to take for us to reap the benefits of the money we're putting into that.
Well, one of the things that will show up in the PPA versus ownership analysis will be that payback period.
The consultant is doing that work now.
Okay, so we'll see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments, John?
When I would just add, I mean, to Kelly's comment about the canopies, I mean, I don't disagree that they're large. They're really, and so I keep looking at them and thinking, you know, and are there ways to try to make sure that we make them as aesthetically compatible, if you will, as possible? I think there is a strong commitment to try to reach the net zero goal, and I think we have to, you know, just speaking broadly, we're not used to looking at solar panels of that size, so I think that is you know, it's a change. So you know, as we go through this process, if there are ways to kind of make them, you know, fit better with the site, I think we ought to certainly entertain those. But it is a challenge.
When you look at this picture, it's not very pretty, looking at the building
Right.
through this picture. And I agree that but the committee has made a commitment to go to net zero, and in order to do that, we're sacrificing something, and it's gonna be the look of these, and I think, you know, I think we all may have some concerns about it, but the commitment was to try to get to net zero. So I think we're working towards that, and I think it's still kind of evolving as to the design at some, Vivian?
And to echo that, in an effort to not only go net zero, but to have a little bit better control of the design, and for the design to complement the aesthetics of the building, it's better that your designer make those design recommendations versus a completely separate entity coming in and putting those in. So for those reasons, we do support having it as part of the base building.
Okay. Again, a reminder, as Scott pointed out, we're not committing any funds to anything other than keeping this in the base bid, and the ad alternate will give us an idea of what the additional PVs will cost us if we choose to own them after the analysis. So we have a motion and a second. If there are no more comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One no. Thank you. Scott?
Also tonight, we wanted to present to the building committee a request from the school department that the design and OPM team is also recommending to make just 3 items, but make 3 items that would be part of the project proprietary. And you are allowed under Mass General Law to designate proprietary specifications for any particular product. The law essentially says that it's important that the town, the building committee, the school department evaluate the reasons that you're making something proprietary. And a few years ago, both the IG's office and the AG's office came out with some additional clarification, which essentially says that even though you're making an item proprietary, you still have to accept or equals to it. So proprietary specifications really are just a signal to the bidders with regard to a strong interest in a particular product, but I would point out that they still allow or equals to be submitted. And so the school department has done their due diligence. We have met with school administration, school technology to discuss these issues on a number of occasions. They've prepared, and you have before you a memo from Superintendent Galston that summarizes it, but after doing quite a bit of research and having quite a bit of discussion, there are 3 items that they are recommending that the building committee approve as proprietary items. They involve the interactive projectors in the building that would be in the new buildings, the Cuniff and the Hosmer. They involve the type of video surveillance server as well as the software for that server. And they involve the voice amplification systems inside the classrooms. Each classroom in the Cuniff and Hosmer will have a voice amplification system, which is essentially a series of speakers in the ceiling that will broadcast from a microphone that's worn by the facilitator or the teacher in order to help students, not just students who have difficulties with hearing, but all students in terms of providing even distribution of voice across the classroom. There are good reasons, and they're summarized in the memo, that each one of these items is being requested as a proprietary item. In the case of the interactive projector, and these would be in each of the classrooms, the interactive projector, the school department is requesting that the Epson BrightLink be established as proprietary. I would point out that all of the interactive projectors that we might potentially specify for these school projects are in the kind of $2,000 to $2,200 range. So there's nothing about making this particular projector proprietary that will increase the cost of the project, but we expect that it would be consistent with very similar manufacturers. But the Epson BrightLink is the technology that the school department has and will have in other buildings. It's the technology that they're familiar with, and it has a number of significant advantages over some of the other manufacturers. It allows you to use a standard whiteboard, which is really attractive, so you don't have to use some manufacturer's specialized whiteboard. They've advanced their technology enough that it will project and allow a marker to be both written on the board and to use the electronic pen associated with the projector. It's the kind of projector that we've seen specified as proprietary, quite frankly, in the last 4 school projects we've done because of the universal use of this technology. So it certainly, after discussions with the school department, it certainly makes a lot of sense to make that proprietary. And then on the video surveillance system, you can see from the memo, the school department is requesting the exact video management system. That's the brand EXACQ. It's because the school department, as well as the police department, has familiarity with this particular system. It also is a widely used system. We've seen it specified as proprietary in some of our other school projects recently. And so it makes a lot of sense. And for the reasons that are described in the memo, there's certainly justification for that. Just like with the Epson BrightLink projector, this is not a situation where by making it proprietary there would be any additional cost. The cost associated with this system is very similar to other systems, but it is a compatibility issue and a consistency of product issue across the other schools and the other town buildings. And then on the voice amplification system, the system that's identified in the memo is provided by a company called Lightspeed Technologies. It's called their TopCat system. And we have also seen this specified as proprietary in our last several school projects because they have developed a technology whereby which they use a different frequency. They use a 1.9 gigahertz frequency, which is different from like your data and your wireless and some of the other things that sometimes interfere with these systems. And so we have seen a lot of schools utilize this system because it has much less interference and works much more cleanly in the classroom. And then it has a couple of additional features that school administration and teachers seem to like. For example, as the classrooms become more flexible and students work in groups, this particular system has the ability to do sound pods that you can place in various groups of students, and the teacher can speak individually to separate groups of students through the microphone. So just a lot of features where it appears that they're sort of leading the industry in terms of convenience for student and teacher use. So we also support the idea that the school department has identified this as an item that they would like to see specified as proprietary. So ultimately, it's necessary for the building committee to take a vote to establish these as proprietary in the specifications. But with that, I'll certainly defer to Superintendent Galson for any additional comments or any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I just want to just assert once again that these are products that we're using within our schools already. One of the things that the architect alluded to with the light speed amplification system, we use this in our classrooms, not every classroom at this point in time, especially for students who have difficulties hearing, and our teachers are very accustomed to using it. But there is a body of research that, which you pointed out, that definitely suggests that if it's across the board in classrooms, students, doesn't matter whether you have difficulties hearing or not, are more attentive, and learning outcomes are definitely improved. So we certainly support this being something that's in our elementary schools across the board.
Are there any other questions here? Leo?
Is this the extent of the proprietary specifications being recommended?
It is. There's sometimes other items that we consider, and we've certainly talked with the school administration and Lori with facilities about potential other items. We're going to write a very tight specification around, for example, automatic temperature controls in the building, but we're going to keep that open to several top-tier manufacturers. And there's some other systems we talk about, but these three items are ultimately the items that the school department is requesting the building committee make proprietary.
So we've had a lot of discussion about the facade of these buildings and the importance of quality control over those materials. And I'm concerned, I'll just go on record to say that I'm concerned about being value engineered down from something that we would like to see performance-wise out of a 50 or plus year building down to something that will not last. And so I recommend that you try and control that as best you can, the quality that you're looking for and the quality of the execution that this town deserves.
With Leo, just specifically with regard to exterior fenestration components
Now,
or all?
Specifically, the quality of the composite materials, composite wood
Yes.
materials, and also the quality of the metal panel finish and other things. I would highly recommend that that this town set a minimum baseline for performance and not be value engineered down over time.
Would absolutely agree with that.
Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the school building committee authorizes proprietary systems for the elementary schools for Epson BrightLink interactive projectors, the exact video management system, and the TopCat system by Lightspeed for voice amplification.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I think next, Vivian was going to speak a little bit to a schedule update. You're welcome.
I'm not going to go line by line through every item, but do want to highlight some of the main points of conversation. All the items that are on the left that have a check mark next to them have already been completed. Also, you'll notice that there are a few color variations on the schedule. The green and the light green pertain to work to be executed by the contractor. The light brown shading is one that are work specifically towards the architectural team. The darker brown tone, or the orangey tone, is work that we've been involved with the district and the community in regards to move management. We anticipate if we go kind of somewhat to the middle of the page, we anticipate the 100% construction documents for Cuniff and Hosmer due on 3/11. And at that point, we will, on 3/12, go out to bid to the contractors and the filed subbidders. The subcommittee has already met and evaluated all of the pre-qualifications and pre-qualified almost all of the contractors and almost all of the filed subbidders. And so we anticipate going out on 3/12 for bidding. Lowell's project, if you, line 29, for those that can see that far down. Lowell, the 60% to 90% CDs, we anticipate having those done by 7/31, which would be towards the later part of the summer. And with that, the 100% CDs would be finalized by the October timeframe. Moving a little bit further down, with the filed subbidders, those for Hosmer and Cuniff are due on 4/8. And the general is due on the next page on 4/30. So in essence, by early May, we should know who our general contractor is, along with all of our filed subbidders, and start negotiations for the contract and awarding them, and hope to have those completed by the end of May, so we could get them on board at least a month in advance to start preparations and get them familiarized with the project as well as the logistics. Towards the midpoint, which is the orange section, or move management, both of the schools are anticipated to move out this summer. So for Hosmer, going into the Z, and for Cuniff, moving out and going into the Cuniff West. We do have, I'll share it a little bit further down, the Hosmer construction timeframe is roughly about 24 months of active construction. We're hoping that we can maybe tighten that schedule and bring it in closer to 22 months. Cuniff, we anticipate it being between 17 to 18 months of construction. In the green, with the contract finalized, we hope that the contractor will mobilize at the end of the school year, being 6/29 of this year, 2020. And Cuniff will be completed prior to Hosmer, and Cuniff moves back during the winter break of '21 and starts their new school in January of 2022. Hosmer to follow soon after. Hosmer, we hope to have it completed by the end of the summer and move in for the September timeframe of 2022 as well. Once those are completed, we will also be moving forward with Lowell and having those documents ready for bid, as well as moving forward with the construction. The reason why on your screen it shows TBD, only because we are working through the details for the Lowell on exactly when we anticipate having them moved, since Cuniff West, or the St. Jude, has just recently become an option for us. We're looking into reevaluating if it's possible to move them earlier versus waiting for the Hosmer, and all of those details have not been fully vetted. Once they are, we'll represent that schedule to this committee and the community. Any questions?
Questions? Steve?
I had a quick one. I was talking with Pete, and he indicated he had a field scheduled at Cuniff through the end of June. It seems like we wouldn't mobilize till the end of June, so hopefully that, if there's a few days here and there to adjust, that shouldn't be an issue, I assume.
Right, and we're also, We've tried to take into account that there might be potential for snow days that the school hasn't used yet, but it is, February has just started.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? Kelly?
I was wondering if you were planning to share the pre-qualified list of contractors and subcontractors for us to see?
We can. We are also planning on sharing it with their scorecards to the actual filed subbidders. So we'd be happy to share that with you.
And then will there be visibility for the committee in the procurement process as you guys proceed with the buyout?
Buyout of,
So when you bring on your GCs and you start submitting approval letters and you're interviewing, are we going to have visibility in that and be able to?
there is a
participate?
subcommittee already formed, and it was part of the task of the subcommittee to evaluate all of the general contractors as well as the filed subbidders.
Oh.
And they were very hard at work and approved all 4 of the general contractors and almost all of the filed subbidders.
Any other questions on schedule? Lindsay?
This is just a general question for people in town who are more in the know than I am about this. I'm just wondering, at what point in time are we able to communicate with the town and the rec department and local youth organizations for sports that use these fields that are going to go out of commission about trying to help with brainstorming ideas for alternate solutions? So it's not necessarily having to do with the building projects, but I'm just kind of curious when we can start that process to communicate with the people impacted by the impact, of the construction being on those sites and not having access to the fields and things like that, because that's going to be important to people for a couple of years while we work on that.
I think Peter has been working on that for some time now, because I get emails from him often asking for the specifics on a particular field. Asking on the specifics for a particular field or project. So I know those efforts are underway.
Great, thank you.
Any?
Thank you. Maybe this goes to Steve. Just looking at the schedule, for tearing down the Hosmer and the Cuniff, and getting permission from the Historical Commission. So I see that's not on here. I assume that's just a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, we scheduled it for their hearing, and so they're on the agenda for the next Historic Commission, both the Hosmer and Cuniff. Obviously, there is the potential for a year delay, demolition delay, and if that's the case, we'll have a serious problem, but we're hoping that won't be the case.
And for the Hosmer, it's for the whole thing.
In the case of the Hosmer, the portion we are demolishing first is the newer portion. So that's the reason we didn't feel the urgency to get the approval to demolish it, because we're demolishing the newer portion first. In the case of the Cuniff,
But we're also demolishing the 1950s edition, right? The gym, the cafeteria, the auditorium.
yeah, I was thinking that was newer, but I guess that would still
Well,
fall
it is
within-
newer than,
Yeah.
Still old enough.
it's newer than the 1919 building.
Yeah.
But and we're also tearing down the 2002
Yeah.
edition, so. But I assume the application is for everything east of the Brigham House?
Yep.
Okay, so, just want
Everything's
to, I didn't see it on the schedule, so.
Any other questions? John?
Maybe, could you just, maybe, I guess Vivian, just describe the process once the contract bids are due on April 30th, I think is what I wrote down, back to the town? And then what's the process from there that we go through in terms of choosing a contractor?
We would meet again with the subcommittee that has been established and do the evaluation. And very similarly to the sustainability subcommittee, they would make a recommendation to the larger committee for a vote.
So do the contractors present to that subcommittee, or do they just review documents?
Has to be an open public, a public bid opening. So what will happen is, about 3 weeks prior to the general contractor bid opening, whose entity will ultimately be constructing the project, we'll have to open filed sub-bids for several of the trades. There are about 16 trades that in Massachusetts, we are required to bid separately, and they're referred to as filed sub-bidders. It'll be masonry, there'll be miscellaneous metals, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. There are a lot of different sections of the project that have to be bid completely separately. And so we'll be bidding to those subcontractors 3 weeks ahead of the general contractor. And as Vivian points out, we'll get all those results in and vet those subcontractor bids with the subcommittee. And then we provide those subcontractor bids to the general contractors, and they incorporate those amounts and those subcontractors into their bid, and then they add the additional scope of work that would be provided by the general contractors themselves and give us one combined bid price for the project. And then that bid price has to be evaluated again and reviewed with the subcommittee for a recommendation to this building committee.
So the filed subbidders, their bids are due on 4/8 based on our schedule on the previous page, whereas the general contractors' bids are due on 4/30.
And does the subcommittee recommends 1, 2, whatever? How many would they recommend to the full building committee for consideration?
With the sub bids, it's simply approving all of the sub bids and providing those to the general contractor, because the general contractor has the option to utilize any of those bids that he wants to utilize. He doesn't necessarily have to use the lowest one. He can utilize any of them. When it comes to the general bids, it will just be a review of all of the general bids to confirm that they are in fact compliant bids. And then the subcommittee and then the building committee would be awarding to the lowest bidder, the lowest qualified bidder. And because you pre-qualified all of these bidders, it's assumed that they're all qualified at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions on schedule? Kelly?
Just a question about the file subbid and the bid process. So Vivian, will your team be leveling the bids? And that's how the review process works?
We will, as part of the review process with the subcommittee. And mind you that the subcommittee has not only just reviewed all of the pre-qualifications, a lot of reference checks have been made, as well as phone calls. So a great deal of effort has been placed in giving qualifications, approving these filed subbidders, as well as the general.
Leo?
Would you just remind me who's chairing the subcommittee, please?
Members of the subcommittee are Paul Anastasia, Lori Gable, your architectural team, us, as well as the fire.
Peter
The
McLaughlin.
building inspector?
Peter McLaughlin, the building commissioner.
Thank you.
Any other questions on schedule? What else do you have for
That was
us?
all on the schedule.
Scott?
That's all.
Any questions to this point on anything we've covered from the committee? Anyone from the general public? Please step up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Hi, Michael Morton, 28 Dewey Street. My son's at the Hosmer, and I was looking at the phasing, the schedule posted in November. It looked like there would be a significant amount of time with no playground at the school during construction. And I just wanted to ask, it's my understanding that, maybe plans are in flux, but I wanted to make the point that, even going for more than a few weeks, a few months without a playground, and specifically a play structure, I feel it's just too much of a sacrifice and, isn't delivering on, the educational mission for the kids. So I would request that, if needed, that be put on the agenda for a future meeting.
Unfortunately, I've stated this, I'm going to state it again tonight.
Okay.
There is going to be some inconveniences for a lot of different people, including the students. I will talk to the project team and see what we can do. But again, there are going to be some sacrifices that are going to have to be made by a lot of different people. And I understand your
Yeah.
concern, and we will go over it and
Okay.
report back.
Yeah, I would just say, like, I totally agree, like, we are willing to make the sacrifices. This project's going to be amazing, it's worth it, but if there's any possible way, and the community, I'm sure, would be willing to raise money for a temporary structure, volunteer labor to help move it, I mean, whatever it is, I'm hoping there's a creative solution out there.
We'll work together as a team with the superintendent and her staff and the team to try to minimize that impact and try to make sure there is something offered.
The second thing, I'll be quick. I wanted to request a public forum just to go over how the students will live through the construction zone at Hosmer, just to get a sense of the impacts and the mitigations.
As we get a little bit closer to these projects, we're going to do some forums at the schools.
Okay, great.
And we're going to go to the Hosmer community, we'll go to the Coniff community, and as you'll see later on, we're going to be creating a website with contact information, with everything that's going to be going. We're going to try to tighten it up. We're going to get to your neighborhood as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, may I?
Yes.
There is already a plan in place to do exactly that, to not only show the phasing, the construction site, and the logistics of it, parent drop-off, pickup, all of those questions that you might already have. The date is very tentative at this point, but there is plans to have that exactly for each of the communities, not just Hosmer, for
Yeah.
Coniff, and future for Lowell as well.
Great, thank you.
Jocelyn Tager, resident of Watertown, Robbins Road. My question is, when you put out the bids I couldn't tell from the schedule when the bids for solar would be put out, because the canopies would be built by the construction, or whoever's doing the construction, but the solar arrays will have to be bid out to solar company. When will that be?
Let me just explain. We voted this evening to have the solar panels as an alternate, so we will get an idea of what they're going to cost. We're still going through the process of having our consultant analyze the cost benefits to a PPA versus ownership.
Right.
That stuff we're not going to be talking about. We will be talking about paying or buying or leasing the solar panels sometime a little bit later on, after that analysis is done.
Correct. Okay, that I understand, but at some point, whether it's a PPA or ownership, it has to be put out to bid.
It does.
That would be on that April 8th date. When we include them as a bid alternate, by Mass General Law, we have to assign those to the electrical subcontractor. And so the electrical subcontractor would be providing a subcontractor to him that would be providing the price and the installation for those panels. And that number, that bid would occur on that April 8th date.
So on April 8th, then will the RFP for the panels go out?
No, it will go out, it won't be an RFP because under Mass General Law, as part of a construction bid, it has to be within that construction bid to the filed subbidder. So it would go out on the same day that Vivian reported releasing the documents, that March 12th date.
And how would solar installers know to bid? I'm just curious about that.
Well, it will be, the bidding of the project will be publicly advertised, but because the bid has to come through the electrical subcontractor, that they would, only those vendors that he knows, trusts, has confidence in, would be bidding to him as part of the project. Now, if the town decides they don't want this alternate, I'll just emphasize what the chairman said. You do not have to accept this alternate, but it's the only way we can bid solar as part of a Massachusetts 149 construction project, is to assign it that way. The town could ultimately say, we don't want the bid alternate, We don't want to accept that it's done by an electrical subcontractor. We're not going to accept it and go out and procure the solar panels in any way they want with, with an RFP, with a PPA, where ownership, or with a PPA non-ownership, and they could do that completely separate from this bid. But to get a number under Mass General Law construction bid requirements, we have to put them in this construction bid in that manner.
So then help me understand, it is the electrical contractor who's going to choose who installs our panels and is responsible for them?
If you decide to accept the bid alternate, then yes, that's the way it has to occur.
Okay, well, is there any way that this committee or anybody in this town, for instance, our energy manager, Ed Lewis, has a way of monitoring this process? Because there's a huge, huge difference in solar companies and solar installers. So we could get a really bad deal or a good deal, and we could get a bad installer or a good installer. And so leaving this huge thing up to an electrical contractor seems to me not in our best interests.
You would have the opportunity to see who that subcontractor is going to be. In other words, who that solar installer is going to be. And if you decided that that was just absolutely unacceptable, then the action to take would be to not accept that bid alternate and then procure the panels in a different manner.
Okay, but we will have no say in who that electrical contractor chooses.
That is correct. It is against the law for you to dictate under a Massachusetts construction contractor to that subcontractor who he utilizes as his subcontractors. Unfortunately, that's just what Massachusetts general law requires.
Right. Okay.
Excuse
That's
me,
right.
excuse me. Please don't disrupt the meeting.
But if this bill,
Well, I would then encourage this committee to really consider who our solar installer is, whether it is a PPA or we own, regardless of what the analyst comes back with, because in either way, there's a huge variation in solar installers, enormous in the workmanship or workpersonship, also in equipment, but I assume that will be in the bid. But craftsmanship, follow-up, all of that. I spent a lot of time researching this, I know it. So I really ask this committee not to just take any solar installer, but to be very clear about what we do here. Like I said, whether it's we own it or own the panels or lease them, because fine installers also do leasing. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Moving on, we have review and approval of invoices, and Mr. Tracy had to leave, so Mr. Picciarelli will handle this section.
Okay, for the elementary school project, we have 3 invoices for AI3 Architects, totaling $813,242.79. So I will make a motion that we approve those invoices for AI3 for the 3 elementary school project for $813,242.79.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next invoice is for the 3 elementary school projects. Hill International, a single invoice for $122,125. So I'll make a motion that we approve the Hill International invoice for the 3 elementary school projects for $122,125.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Next, we have an invoice for AI3 Architects for the high school project It's totaling $54,134.20. I'll make a motion that we approve the AI3 invoice for the high school project for $54,134.20.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Communications update, I want to recognize Vivian first.
Thank you, Chairman. The Communications Subcommittee did have an opportunity to meet where 3 potential website designs were presented, and one was selected as the optimal choice. We will be going back and reviewing and discussing with the website designer to get a revised quote for the website design based on our requirements and what was discussed in the subcommittee. And with that, all of the communication for this project will go through that website where there'll be a separate tab for documentation, meetings, agendas, and all. It'll be archival for all of the meetings that have happened and future agendas moving forward. Also, within that web page or website, you will be able to select either the Hosmer, Cuniff, or Lowell, and be able to be directed to those pages to get specific information for those schools and those projects, mainly on logistics, schedule, as well as any drop-off, pickup locations, changes, and construction photos and updates.
We're also going to be including, and we're going to continue to try to do a good job gathering people's emails and creating the Notify Me system through this website as well, to try to make sure everybody is informed when we're having meetings and what's going on. Any questions on communications? Kelly?
When is the website going to be live?
Not exactly sure of the exact date for when it will go live, but we are anticipating getting it done sooner than later.
It'd be great to have a target time frame. I'm sure Lindsay can agree. There are a tremendous amount of emails out there and posts and Facebook comments of people who are frustrated and confused. No one can figure out where the meeting minutes are. There's multiple links. No one knows when the meetings are. It's getting bad, so we're so far overdue on getting this website up. I know that, it's taken a while, but it's just the community is starting to catch on and they're getting frustrated. So I don't know what else to say.
Understood, and we understand the sentiment and working feverishly to get it done sooner.
So I would just also comment that there is a button now for the Notify Me on the town's website, so people can select that as well, and we'll be pushing out agendas and minutes and presentations, et cetera,
We're
so.
going to try to link it with this one
Yep.
as well.
Great.
Just so that we're trying to get as much information out as possible.
Yes.
And we are behind, and John?
Just to clarify, so an outside provider is going to do the website? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
An outside provider will be building the website, but the town will own and operate it.
Okay. And so that, then it will be linked, well, the existing one from the school's website will just link to that, correct, I assume? Right.
Vinnie was part of this.
So it was a small subcommittee of the subcommittee that met. So basically, we looked at 3 websites, and we selected one that, for a project that Vivian, a school department that they're already using, and it's really simple, straightforward. Because of where we are in the project, the vast majority of stuff on it will be sort of archival with the folders like we had in the original website that Daedalus did. The key feature of this is going to be sort of 3 big buttons, one for the Hosmer, one for the Cuniff, one for Lowell, to really get us through the construction phase. The gentleman who's here is concerned about what's going to happen, scheduling, where the kid's going to go, where I drop kids off, where do I pick them up, all that kind of stuff. So that's really going to be the focus of this website, sort of the logistics around sort of the construction process. All the other archival materials going back for 2 years will be there in folders and stuff. And what I envision is, when you go to the school website and you click on Building for the Future, There'll be sort of, click on the elementary schools that come to this site. You'll click on the high school, it'll go to a site that
There'll be a high school one as well.
Compass will be separate from the one, because of the way the contracts are.
Right.
And then, we'll have one for the, middle school, check in later for that. But I think that would be sort of replaced, and then everything, everything that we had before from the previous elementary school site will just, be loaded into this site, and that will disappear. So it'll be a lot cleaner. The way we have it now with the grid, with all that other stuff there, can all go away. So this would be just one site that'll have everything in one place in a logical sequence to replace sort of the interim step we have with sort of like the grid
Right.
and the old data list site. So it'll be super clean and straightforward. And yes, you're right. It's been, unfortunately, we lost some steam in this, so. But this is going to cost, I just want to know, it's going to cost somewhere $8,000 or $10,000 to do all this. So at some point we do that, and it's also going to need to have training for staff, whether that staff is somewhere in the school department for actually, who's going to load the documents in as every meeting to get it in there. So those are some of the things we just need to figure out, who's actually uploading the documents to the website once the template's set up.
Okay.
So that'll be a future meeting that we'll have with the communications subcommittee. And we're waiting for the web developer to give us a final quote about what it's going to cost. The good news is it's a standard template that they have, so it should be relatively simple to kind of get it up and going quickly.
Leo?
Leo?
Thank you for explaining that about the templating, and I'm glad to hear that you're already thinking forward to the high school. I think it's important that we have a graphic consistency between our public presence. And as far as the templating is concerned, there's many different devices that people log into this website on. Are we assuming that the templating will be mobile-friendly?
The design that we selected was very straightforward, very clean line and streamlined, as well as trying to make it very intuitive, that all the information you will need or would be looking for would be right up front in the home page. For example, on the side, it would be for meetings. You click that button and it gives you folders of all the meetings that we have had to date and ones that we'll have in the future. If you click on that folder, all of the meeting minutes, the presentations, everything will be in there. If you wanted to watch it, there'll be a link that takes you right into the town's website that connects you to the live stream that we already see.
So from your answer, it does play well with mobile. Thank you.
Kelly?
Just a quick follow-up question about the website, and maybe I'm misremembering because it's been a while since we did the OPM switch up, but I thought it was in the scope of services for the OPM to manage the website.
I don't believe it was, and if it was in your previous, and I think since then it was decided that it'd be best if the town owned it, and operated it, so afterwards you can, it wouldn't necessarily end once our contract ended.
Yeah, I just remember it being in that scope of services, so I guess I'm kind of asking, like, have we already paid for it? Just trying to understand how that all works, so might want to just dig into that.
Lindsay?
This is just a question about the town owning and operating the website. Two questions about, first is, at the initial startup of it, is part of the design and the launch of it that all the materials we already have will be on the website? Or is it like website goes live and then we need to find someone to do all that?
It would be imprudent to not have all the documents loaded in when we start, so.
So that leads into my follow-up question, which is, I have concerns about saying it will be the school department's job to maintain and upload all those. The amount of work they're doing with move management and helping teachers and talking to parents and dealing with education is extremely time-consuming, and I have concerns that in this meeting, we're saying it would be the school department's job to upload documents and make sure it was maintained. I just think we need to be careful about finding a person that actually has the bandwidth to do this regularly and not make too many
believe that
commitments
that
on
has
behalf of
been-
other people so far.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I don't believe that has actually been finalized. I think it was just a thought and a suggestion that was made, but it has by no means been finalized.
Sure, I don't want to undervalue the fact that people need this information, but I just have concerns about whose job it's going to be to make sure that stuff gets up there. That's all.
Yeah, so that'll be, we're going to need to discuss that at the next subcommittee. But all this, whenever we go live, all the historic stuff that's already been loaded on the website sort of needs to be ported over to the new one so that it's all there at the same time, and whether, and right now, like, so the agendas and minutes are currently being posted on the school website, so somebody's currently doing that, and whether you post it on the school website or post it on this project website, we can figure that out. I don't want to speak, the first step is we got to get the platform in place, and then we can figure out who's going to do what and how it's going to happen, so.
Further discussion
For further discussion, so.
will be had on this. Any other comments on communications? I just handed everybody the new capital improvement program that the manager put out, and the green tabs are items that relate to this committee, if you'd like to read them at some point. This is going to be vetted through the Budget and Fiscal Oversight Committee and presented to the council for approval, but the manager thought it would be prudent that we provide this document to this committee because a lot of the money that's being committed in the capital improvement program is going to the schools and the school building committee. So that's what this document is. There's extra copies here if anybody wanted to see them. The next meeting is going to be February 27th here in the council chamber, and that will be strictly on the high school. Scott or Vivian, do you have anything else that you need to add? Anyone from the public have any other further comments? Kelly?
Just looking at the schedule, it says there's a move management update today.
Did we get that?
Vivian?
Oh, I'm just looking at the schedule, and it says move management update, 2/5/20.
We've been having updates on a weekly basis with the facilities department as well as the superintendent.
Okay.
And the three principals, including the Phillips.
So that's not shared with the community, it's, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.